All right, let's dive in. Today, we're basically becoming genetic detectives. We're on the trail of a really common and really serious health problem, and we're going to follow the clues hidden deep inside our own DNA to figure out where it all starts. Our investigation kicks off with just a single number, but it's a huge one, 10%. Now, what does this number actually represent? Well, it's the first major piece of evidence, and it shows you the massive scale of the problem we're dealing with here. That's right, a full 10% of adults worldwide are affected by chronic kidney disease, or CKD. And the crazy part? So many of them have no idea they even have it. This makes it a huge global health issue, one that's kind of hiding in plain sight. And that brings us to the first part of our investigation, trying to understand why CKD is such a silent epidemic. You know, when we think of kidney disease, our minds usually jump to the usual suspects, right? Diabetes, high blood pressure, and yeah, those are absolutely major causes. But for a ton of people, the real culprit isn't about lifestyle. It's hidden in their genetic code, a clue they've been carrying since the day they were born. And here is the real kicker. Because CKD often has no symptoms at all in the early stages, it can go totally undetected for years. By the time it's finally discovered, a lot of damage might have already been done. And that's exactly why digging into these genetic risk factors is so important. Okay, so let's narrow our focus a bit. We're going to zoom in from the massive problem of CKD in general to a very specific inherited mystery that's behind a lot of these genetic cases. So meet our prime suspect, autosomal dominant polycystic kidney disease, or ADPKD for short. It's actually the most common inherited kidney disorder out there. What happens in ADPKD is that these fluid-filled cysts start developing in the kidneys, causing them to swell up, sometimes to the size of a football. It's pretty wild. And you've got to understand, this isn't a problem that just stays in the kidneys. Not at all. ADPKD is what we call a systemic disease. Its effects ripple throughout the entire body, causing everything from high blood pressure at a young age to cysts in the liver and even life-threatening brain aneurysms. It's a complex and really far-reaching condition. So how do doctors actually pin this down? Well, it's not as simple as just spotting a single cyst. Clinicians use these really specific criteria based on a person's age and how many cysts they can see on an ultrasound. It's a very methodical way to make sure they can tell ADPKD apart from other things that are much less serious. All right, so we've identified our suspect, we've looked at the evidence, now it's time to head to the lab. We're going to crack the genetic code to see exactly how this all works. And this is the central question of our whole investigation, isn't it? How can one tiny little typo in our DNA lead to such a massive system-wide disease? It seems almost impossible. Well, genetic detectives have actually found the smoking gun, and it's remarkably specific. A whopping 80% of all cases are caused by a mutation in one single gene called PKD1. Another 15% come from its partner in crime, PKD2. The genetic fingerprint is incredibly clear. So a good way to think about these PKD1 and PKD2 genes is like their instruction manuals. Their only job is to tell the body exactly how to build two super important proteins, polycystin-1 and polycystin-2. And these proteins are absolutely essential for our cells to work and talk to each other correctly. Now, to understand what goes wrong, we have to meet one more character in this story, the G protein. It's a basic part of how our cells communicate. Honestly, the easiest way to think about it is just as a tiny biological on-off switch. Okay, I know this diagram looks complicated, but the idea behind it is actually pretty simple. That polycystin-1 protein we just talked about, the one made by the PKD1 gene, it acts like a receiver on the outside of the cell. Its whole job is to help that G protein, that little on-off switch, work the right way. But when there's a mutation in that PKD1 gene, the receiver is basically broken. So here's the bottom line. That mutation is just a typo in the instruction manual. That typo leads to a broken receiver protein. The broken receiver can't help the on-off switch, so the cell's signaling goes completely haywire. And the result of all that chaos is the uncontrolled cell growth that creates these dangerous cysts, and just like that, mystery solved. But, you know, cracking the code isn't just about the satisfaction of solving a puzzle. It's about finding a solution. So let's look at how all this genetic knowledge is actually paving the way for brand new treatments. First off, this knowledge is incredibly powerful for patients right now. By figuring out the specific genetic typo a person has, doctors can get a much better idea of how aggressive the disease might be for them. This means they can get more personalized care and monitoring. And this is where the future starts to get really, really exciting. Scientists are now working on therapies that go right to the genetic source of the problem. They're looking at things like gene silencing to just switch off the faulty gene, creating new drugs to stop cysts from growing, and even trying to figure out how to fix those broken cell signals directly. And all this leaves us with one final, very hopeful question. We've gone from a huge global problem all the way down to a single faulty protein on a cell. As we get better and better at reading and maybe even editing our own genetic code, you have to wonder, could we one day have therapies that don't just treat, but actually turn off inherited diseases like this for good? The investigation is far from over,